effectiveness and efficiency in the development of relevant programs. We will support collaborative programs to achieve pharmaceutical sufficiency and security, or in other concerns of public health for that matter, between the UP Manila College of Pharmacy and College of Medicine and relevant units of UP Healthy, such as the College of Forest and Natural Resources, the School of Environmental Science and Management, and the Institute of Biological Sciences.
Did you understand the question?
Yes, I understood it. Thank you very much for the question. Yes, for example, in the area of pharmaceutical reforms that Dr. Romualdez mentioned, a very important component is pharmaceutical sufficiency and security. This will come about through a number of efforts, one of which, it should be a major effort, is for the university to really establish this, the one I mentioned, the Pharmaceutical Institute, to develop drugs from indigenous sources. And certainly that effort will involve everyone. For example, where will we get all the botanical specimen with all the necessary information except from Los Baños? May I give you just a personal example. When we were trying to develop herbal against chronic hepatitis B, it was former Chancellor Villarreal which gave us the plants we need and the knowledge about the plant. So this is a very good example of collaboration. And there are many medicinal plants coming from the sea, plants from the sea. That's where UP Visayas will come in. Diliman is very, very good in molecular biology, the physical chemistries. They have an institute. Naturally, a project like this should involve the whole university, not only an autonomous university, but the rest of the university.
Thank you. Thank you, UP Los Baños, for that question. We now have a question from the UP Open University. UP Open University, please come in.
Yes, good afternoon. We have a question here from the floor. How can open admission or your set of novel methods of selection improve the relevance of UP education in general? What are the implications of this seeming radical paradigm shift on the leadership of UP? How can this change be advocated? Thank you.
Thank you for that very important question. Before I answer the question, let me just, answer your question. Let me just give you a little, observation. I was watching a movie, I forgot the title. But this was a very brilliant guy in the movie applying to Harvard Medical School. Okay. So he was being interviewed by one of the senior professors, and the professor was holding his record and said, "Oh my God, you really have a fantastic grade. But you know," he said, "all of you applying in Harvard have fantastic grades. You tell me one thing you did that will excite me. If I get excited, I'll get you in." Well, that capsulizes what I want to say. I projected here desirable qualities. A long list of desirable qualities. How do I ferret out of this student? I suggested the ways how to ferret it. I said there are many expert interviewed. Look at the big corporation. They can tag at this guy as CEO material. See? And chances are they will succeed. There is already technology in that. There is ample knowledge on how to get these people. Besides, scouting. You know, this guy, even in elementary school, is a natural leader. And his propensity is public service. Why can we not get him? Nurture him, develop him, support him when he's outside. That's what I was saying. I do not mean that 100% of those who will be admitted go through this process. Remember in my presentation, there should be a student mix. I would start with 10%. 10% coming to, let's say, medical school, but do not want to be pill pushers. They just want to acquire the language of medicine. But really, their interest is health microeconomics. So after 2 years, And during the clinical years, I said, stop it. You now get courses from School of Economics in Diliman, School of Public Health. And so in 4 years, he graduates. He's not interested in taking the board. Immediately, I'll place him in PhilHealth. Here is a guy who's very good in microeconomics. Measure all your all the services you offer, and tell him whether, in fact, that is cost efficient and cost beneficial. This is what I mean. A very open system where everyone who comes in can develop at his own pace to his particular career. My last example is myself. When I went to Cleveland, the first time I saw my professor who will teach me, he said, "Sir, can I see your training program?" He looked at me, "What do you mean training program? Why did you come here? List down what you want to do." So I list down, "Sir, I want to know intestinal motility, etc., etc." "Ah, that's what you want. All right, here is where we go. This is where intestinal motility is being done. Now, you develop your own schedule on how you will learn." That is what I'm trying to propose. Hindi yung di kahon. Pasok mo, kung magme-medicine ka, kahit hindi ka naman magpa-practice, 5 taong kang pag-i-intern, galit na galit ka, ayaw mo naman talaga magtingin ng pasyente. Pero di kahon eh. You cannot escape. You see? This is what I mean. Yes.
Thank you.
Can be
Thank
developed.
you for that question from the moderator in Open University, Professor Juvie Herbacio. We now have UP Baguio next. UP Baguio, please come in with your question.
Yes, good afternoon. Dr. Domingo, here is a question from our BS Bio students who listened to your lecture. The question is, what advice can you give smaller UP units like UP Baguio to be able to attain the present stature of UP Manila, now as a primary university known to be dedicated to healthcare?
I wish President Roman is here, because that is really a question for the president. But how do you achieve the stature of UP Manila in terms of health, applying it to Visayas? I don't have any formula for that. It takes years and years of work to achieve such a status. Remember, for example, our College of Medicine, PGH, even older than the university, you know. So it's a question of time is very important, not only time, but of course leadership in the university is very important.
Yeah,
not to mention resources. In all this lecture, my number one misgiving is we are asking all of this sacrifice from student to faculty. In return, what do they get from the university? I wish they would answer that. Now that we have a 208 charter, and the charter, among other things, the fundamental change in the charter is, foremost, is that we can now pay people commensurate with their training and work. That is what is asked of the university. We are always carping at the constituency of the university. Let's reverse the process. What is the university doing for us?
Sir, they are probably asking the question on what possible niche that UP Baguio.
Okay.
If,
I'm sorry.
let's say, UP Manila is in health, UP Visayas in fisheries, UP Los Baños in agriculture and the like. Perhaps that is an unfair question for you to respond to, because that is not your choice. We now have a question from UP Mindanao. But anyway, thank you for that question, UP. And Baguio, when we have the next question from UP Mindanao, please come in.
Good afternoon. Thank you for that inspiring lecture. I'd like to read a question from a BS Architecture student, Ms. Ethel Oros. Students ideally want to help in the development of the Philippines, but how will you motivate them not to go abroad and just stay here despite the poverty we're experiencing now? Thank you.
Thank you. You ask a very, very difficult question, but the answer to me is rather simple. If you consider only the market forces, then all of us will have to leave this country. But let me remind you, maybe I should not say this because the person who said this was here. confronted with the situation like us in the Philippines, let's say you are a nursing graduate. You graduated, your parents spent a lot of money, invested, and then the salary they will give you in a hospital will not be able to recoup what has been invested in you. That's a very difficult situation at a personal level. You really have only two choices. First choice is you live and try to earn money so that you can replenish what has been lost. Nothing wrong with that. I will not put any moral value in that. But the other option there is, well, I was trained in UP, and Dr. Domingo said 87% of the expenditure was paid by my neighbor. Baka naman meron akong obligasyon kahit katiting. Because of that, siguro magtsitsaga ako rito. Again, another personal choice. Was he being a martyr or, hindi naman siguro. But that is the extent of the decision-making process. No? So, I leave it to the individual. That's why I said, our education must emphasize this. If you were in a private school, no problem. You paid for everything. The alternative to, one of the components of what I'm proposing is, all right, let's say medicine, 50% recruited through my suggestion, process I suggest. The other 50 came on their own merits. Hey, summa cum laude ako, cum laude, you get me. Fine. Ano ba, alis ka ba pagka-graduate? Oo. Ay, magbayad ka kasing laki na sa St. Luke's. Meron pang sobra. Is that bad? No, that's not bad. That is the basic philosophy of tertiary education. Who benefits from tertiary education? The person who received the tertiary education. Therefore, you must pay for all of it. So, sorry, Armand, I got carried. But let me give this last example. Many years ago, I was asked to speak. And I estimated a 1-year expenditure of government on tertiary education. And I computed it. 1 year, you can build a road, 4 lanes, on its cement from Manila to the tip of Sorsogon. Now, you convince me as a taxpayer, which is more important, for me to support your education or for me to travel that highway. The highway, the road is open to everyone, egalitarian. Once it is built, magtatakbo ka dyan, gumulong-gulong ka dyan, bahala ka. Tertiary education, you give the guy, you endow the guy with an advantage over the rest. Okay yan kung ikaw lahat ang gumastos. Kung kukunin mo sa amin yan, hindi okay yan. Di ba?
Thank you, Dr. Domingo, and thank you, UP Mindanao. We now go to UP Diliman for their question. UP Diliman, please come in. We have the moderator, Professor Villy Buenaventura. Because we have a technical problem with the sound system from Mindanao. Let me just phrase the question as it's coming in. From Diliman, yes. From Dr. Jose Abueva, as the Health Science and Service University of UP as the national university, how would you highlight UP Manila's role vis-a-vis the government hospitals and the private hospitals on one hand and the nation's medical schools on the other?
That really came from a past president. I suggested President Abueva